I'm here today with Ursula Reynolds, and we're talking about the importance of permeability for quality vocational education programs.
And this is a very important topic.
So we want to go through 3 different themes with you in this video. The first is how it is important for VET, so vocational education and training, to be embedded in a permeable systems in order to increase opportunity, reduce social stigma, and improve economic development. Improving opportunity is in and of itself important because that also gets more people through the system, and that improves the equity of the system because we're increasing the different options. I'm going to run through that with you first, and I want to show you a graphic here of a really simple education system. And this is the kind of education system we see in just about every country in the world, right, Ursula?
Exactly. That's the mechanism every country has, just, the general education path.
Yeah. So every country in the world has at least got a general education path, and it often looks something like this from the secondary level, where you have an academic secondary school that leads into academic university degrees. And that's a really good start, and it's especially great if you can get everybody to go through that system. But
not realistic, isn't it?
No, and so imagine you have a second path available to people of vocational and professional education, and already we can see that just by adding a vocational program at the secondary level, we've increased the options available to everybody in the system, because now with permeability, you can move from VET at the secondary level into the workforce, or maybe even into an academic university degree.
Right.
But what we can do to make it even better is to add what we call PET, P-E-T, so professional education and training, which is professional education at the tertiary level. And look at how we've completed the image here from just two different things at 2 different levels, one option to go through them, to a whole range of different things that people can do. And this is really important, isn't it, Ursula?
Yeah, absolutely. And would you agree that even the VET, this vocational education training on upper secondary education, is a must for every society? Not because we need alternatives, but we have a generation, a cohort of young people, let's call them teenagers, who are struggling to become an adult. And some of them just have enough of school at that time. If you offer them an opportunity where you can learn to become an adult within adult teams in the workplace, wouldn't that be a better option for some of them?
Absolutely. And what you're doing with a permeable system is you're saying to people, you know what, if you don't like school, you don't have to stay in school anymore.
Exactly.
You can go and learn in the workplace. And if you decide later you might want to try out another one of these academic programs at university, with a permeable system, you can still do that.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I did personally, as a first education apprenticeship. So I was exactly that person who was just stubborn, storming in the forming phase. My parents were difficult at that time, and I just didn't want to go to school anymore. And if you have that option, now I'm at the university, a professor. If you can then later on move up, I think this is the system every child should get access to.
So really, you're the model for a permeable education system, aren't you?
To some extent, yes.
And I guess that also means that because you've got all of these options, you're really increasing the attractiveness of all of the options themselves, right?
Exactly. I think if the system is permeable, it's not just for the teenager, it's also if you have chosen discipline at the university, or if you have just chosen an occupation which you don't want to stay in for the next 20 years, you need to have a system that gives you this opportunity to move on.
So there's always the pathway to keep going.
Absolutely. The only system which is bad is when it leads to dead ends. Because young people start to understand, young or older, if a dead end is there, it's not attractive.
Right, and I guess a program that is a dead end, if you can't move on anywhere, that's going to be, as you say, an unattractive program. That's probably going to end up being a second-rate program as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why a lot of countries complain about having a stigma on vocational education training, because it's considered as for other people's children. But this is only the case if there are dead ends. If countries build a permeable system, if there is no dead end, every program is attractive.
And in a country like Switzerland, for example, we see that in reality, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean, the Swiss system is one of the most permeable systems, I have to say. it had reforms over 30, 40 years to just build this pathway to the next level, to build passerelles from one program to the other, so that actually you can recommend to all parents whatever your kid want to do, just move the kid to a next step. It's not important whether they start in a vocational or in an academic program. They have all options to move on. And this is also for the economy very important, because if two out of three kids learn in the workplace, that matters a lot to strengthen especially the small and medium enterprises.
I want to come back more to the economy later, but I'm interested to know what then this improvement of permeability in the Swiss system has done to the kind of young people who choose these different kind of programs. Because to go back, I guess, to talking about the dead ends and the second rate, a lot of what you might also hear from people is, well, you only do VET if you're not clever. But that isn't the case in Switzerland anymore, is it?
Absolutely not. No, here we did a study. We basically measure, with the PISA data, we measure what is the cognitive competence of the 15-year-olds and who of the kids choose either an academic baccalaureate or vocational education and training. And on this slide, you see basically we have so-called Einsteins in our program. That means young kids in the age of 15 with high cognitive skills, but they opt for an apprenticeship just because they are in this teenager phase where they say, my priority is actually to become an adult. But later on, they will move on, and most probably they end up either in a University of Applied Sciences or, as I did, at the ETH.
And what we know is that the people who do move on into the universities of applied sciences in Switzerland have the best labour market outcomes of really the whole society.
I agree. The remuneration with regard to salary is higher for those who have a mixed pathway.
Yeah, and so that just goes to show that by increasing the options and the opportunities available to people, you make these different options and opportunities more attractive for everyone, don't you?
Absolutely, this is the case, yes.
So that's the benefit of increasing permeability, or having permeability in the first place for VET for the students. But I actually also at the end want to talk about how, and you touched on a little bit, how permeability makes the labour market more productive and it aids in development. And it makes it more productive because you're teaching people skills that they're going to be able to use right away.
Absolutely. Nowadays, in the, I would say, digital transformation age, we have to cope with this constant change of qualification requirements in the labor market. And for example, if you constantly have to, learn new devices, work on new products, processes, that means you have to retool yourself. So hard skills have a difficult situation because you constantly have to learn new things, while the so-called soft skills is a totally different aspect. And if you can learn and work in a workplace, you have a lot of role models. Not only the best available technology, but also role models.
And we see that in the statistics, don't we? For instance, in Switzerland, we know that 60 years ago, most jobs didn't really require a high level of skills. But since the 1950s, what we see more and more often is that jobs are demanding soft skills from the people who they're looking to hire, and also technical skills as well. And the best place to get that is through a vocational education.
Absolutely. And the soft skills, why are they becoming relatively more important nowadays? It has to do with the type of skills. These are so-called transferable skills. If you once have learned them, you take it with you from one job to the other. And that's obviously appealing to companies. A hard skill, well, if you know how to program, how to work with the program language Java, that's one thing. But if another company asks for Python as a program language, what are you doing? You have from scratch learn that language, and this is always costly. So that's why the soft skills are extremely important nowadays, and the best place to learn them is the business place.
And I think it's important to say here that this is not just for people who are entering the labour market either. This is, as you were talking about before, the opportunities that are required and that you need to take to retrain yourself for a changing workforce are really quite important in today's labour market. And the best way to achieve that is with a permeable system that allows this kind of movement between work and education really seamlessly.
Absolutely. And here you hit an important point. It's over the lifespan. And that's why you not only need the vocational program at the upper secondary level, but also the PET program, Professional Education and Training, because this is especially a program for adults. If you want to retool yourself over your whole lifespan with 35-year-old, with 40, with 45, something like that, then the system should provide alternatives. Who is doing a bachelor program in the age of 50, frankly speaking? So if there is no other option than just the academic path, that means the system is not permeable, not providing solution for lifelong learning.
And you lose then chances to stay at the cutting edge, I guess, of technology, which loses chances for economic growth and development. And this is something I think that certainly is an important thing to keep in mind in contexts where development is still ongoing, but even in highly developed countries like Switzerland, it's something to really always keep in mind.
Absolutely, and that's why lifelong learning is becoming so important. It's not just on the paper, it's real life, and everybody will be affected by that.
So to sum up, I guess permeability is really important for attractive VET programs because it makes them more attractive for students, but it also makes it really attractive for the economy as well. Thanks very much for the interesting chat, Ursula.
Thank you very much, Patrick. See you soon again.